All right, should be no frames drop now. Let me know if there's any issues. Good. My settings were all jacked up. So up the bit rate to about 4K, so it should be better. I think the bit rate was at like 1 meg, so my bad on that. I actually use Game Show for like game streaming stuff, so this is a ultra wide monitor. I love it. So, welcome. We're going to let people filter in, and my Facebook peeps have a lot of questions. I'm not really going to do a Q&A. I usually do Q&As. This is more of like a representation of what I think's, well, what is going on, what I think is going to happen, you know, like that. So, let's let some people filter in here. Let me pop out the chat. I don't want to do this Inception stuff anymore. Get the radar fired up. Where did my chat go? All right. Resolution is 3440 by 1440, so like, what is it, like 2.5K or something? So. We'll get, make sure radar is refreshed. We'll get started. Boy, I tell you, I needed this beer. This has been a long ass week. Hell, it's been a long 2 weeks with Harvey. Super in here? Joe, yes. WFAN fan. Too bad about Carton. Dirtbag. Alright guys. Let's get this started. I'm gonna actually be watching chat on my other screen here. So if you see me looking over, that's what I'm looking at. So I can clear up the screen. So here we are. It is 10:20 Eastern Time, 10:19, 10:20. Irma is looking pretty robust right now. You can see on the screen that I've got the next rad pulled up. Oh, wait, I gotta pull this up real quick. Almost forgot. Need my pointer. Okay. Nope. Oh my gosh. Too many windows. All right. So here we go. The eye itself, if you can kind of see this in action, and this is why I like using XRAD, because it might not be as high resolution, but it has a lot of frames. So you can really see how things are moving, especially with a dynamic event like this with the banding features. So already you can see right across the keys. I think I read that anywhere from 75 to 100 mile an hour winds are being registered. So more than likely the keys, if not already, has probably gone out of power, and I would imagine that the actual weather instruments are going to go here pretty soon in Key West. You know, more power to those guys that decide to stay. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, but they announced that all their families evacuated north, but they were staying, batten down the hatches to get the data and also be able to get that data out to everybody else. Yep, 12 minutes ago it occurred. Okay, I knew it was going to be at some point. So thanks for the heads up there. But you can see, more importantly, the eye. So the eye right now, it was a concentric eye, so meaning you have an inner eye and then you have the outer eye. And you can clearly see that the outer eye is the dominant eye. It's still undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle. You'll hear me refer to that as an ERC. The longer that it takes to actually complete the cycle will reduce the amount of time that Irma will have in order to actually strengthen. But what I'm seeing right now, and forgive me for my crude kind of drawings here, I don't think I have that tool available. Okay, what I'm gathering here, the eye itself is actually probably around 28 to 30 nautical miles. I was looking up on radar scope. That's roughly the size, I would say, of what Irma's actual eye wall was back on Tuesday, when it really started to ramp up and go from that category 3 status all the way up to a 5 within 30 hours. And you'll hear me refer to that again because I went back and did some historical research on Irma and found that over 29 degrees Celsius waters, it actually began strengthening at that point with around a 30 nautical mile eye to a category 5 within a 28 to 30 hours. So from Tuesday mid-morning to afternoon to Wednesday evening, it achieved that status. We all know that the waters right now over the Straits of Florida are anywhere from 30 to, I've seen as high as 32 Celsius. And I'll bring up that image here shortly too to show you that. But that's just a ridiculous amount of heat that this heat engine that is Irma, that is very efficient at taking that energy and transferring it into a tighter core, not only tighter, but then also strengthening that. Oh, we're going to get some more frames loaded in here. Transfer that energy into the eye wall. So what I'm saying is, I think right now we're starting to see the end stages of the ERC. You can kind of see the little pieces of energy here that, and if I can actually stop this, that would help out a lot. Let me stop this. I can show you guys. Jeez, there we go. There we go. Stopped it. Okay. I'm going to draw this so you can see it. Right here, there's a piece of energy. And right here. These are the only two remaining pieces of that eye wall. Once these are absorbed into that outer eye wall, it will be a singular eye. It will no longer be a concentric eye. And when that happens, that is when the system will be allowed to strengthen. Only at that point will it strengthen. So don't expect any big dips in pressure or increases in wind speed right now. If anything, Irma has exhibited a real resistance to even weakening during the ERC cycle. Normally, when these things replace eye walls, they drop almost even 20 millibars, or rather, they gain 20 millibars of pressure. But Irma is not exhibiting that. And yes, storms do take on their own personality. Thank you for commenting on my MS Paint skills. They really do suck. But I think the point was made, right? Okay. Don't give me too hard of a time, guys. I've been doing this for like a week. Every night. All right. Next thing we're going to look at here, it's a frame. It's a fragmented mess right now. I really can't wait until goes fully operational. We don't have to deal with these third-rate sites to host it. You know, good on them for actually doing it, but man, it has just not been easy working with these guys. All right, we'll come back to this. So let's talk a little bit about water vapor, because that matters to hurricanes. And if you don't have water vapor, you're not going to have strengthening, you're going to have weakening. So what does water vapor look like? Well, if you look here, you see these areas that are in yellow. Yellow indicates dry air. Blue indicates pretty neutral, not so much water vapor filled, but neutral. And then you have green, which is blossoming with moisture. Irma right now is actually pulling in some moisture already from the west. It's also going down. It's also going down and pulling moisture from southern, like Cuba, and into the bay south of Cuba. Pretty significant, because that is actually what is forcing moisture up into Miami right now and actually heading north, and plenty of water vapor to work with. It's not ingesting dry air. You would actually see yellow start to pull into and wrap into Irma. That's not happening because it has such a tight banding near its core. It's not allowing dry air to penetrate. So I don't foresee any weakening due to dry air as this begins to make its way northwest. Let's talk a little bit more about why it's going to continue to strengthen. So we know the dry air is not going to be a factor. What about outflow? So outflow, if you guys don't know, is crucial for a hurricane to strengthen, not only maintain its status, but also increase in intensity. And right now, just ideal conditions for outflow. You can see here, this is the actual center of the system. And as Harvey, I called it Harvey, as Irma makes its way northwest, all of the banding that is producing and then the outflow then that's created is being pulled up by the trough that's up here to the north, and then it's also being pulled out east underneath the ridge, and then it's also being pulled south, being pulled west. It is completely ventilating the system. It's allowing it to ventilate it in every direction, so it's not going to choke up the engine that is the core of the system that is going to allow it to intensify. Does that make sense to people, that ventilation is occurring and that it is a big part of the cycle? Next thing, shear. Now this is to be determined. This is an important thing to note. There is a decent amount. I'm going to zoom in here. It's going to look really pixelated, but it'll help to see. Right now, it is just hospitable conditions for Irma to intensify. As this moves to the northwest, and then northwest, and then eventually near the landfall area somewhere on the west coast, which we'll get into, you'll see it starts to turn green here, and then eventually there's this yellow ridge. That yellow ridge is when things begin to kind of break down the banding of Irma, banding of Irma. This is important to note because a lot of people are making a lot out of the shear. I will tell you that it will affect Irma to a degree once it makes its way near landfall. But at that point, hurricane conditions will have been felt within Florida for roughly 12 to 15, even 20 hours. So don't expect a rapid it won't die down quickly. This is a very strong system that will only get stronger. It's incredibly resilient. It rode the entire Cuban coastline, the northeast to northwest coastline overnight and through most of the day today. And yet here it is bombing out once again. So this is a resilient system, and they do almost build personalities of their own. You see this when you chase these systems or you track them for as long as I do, and like myself and the other moderators of tropical weather. This is one of those situations where this is not a system that has shown an extreme weakness to shear. It actually met mid-level shear before it made, I would say actually after it made landfall near St. Martin and was making its way just north of Puerto Rico. It actually met some mid-level shear there and it just blew through it. So I don't anticipate it being a major factor in causing Irma to even go down, I would say, any more than maybe 10, 15 miles an hour in surface wind speeds. That's that. The other part of it is that the trough is lifting a little bit. I'll show that here in the radar in a second. That trough continues to lift. It'll lift this line that you see right here further north, like near the Tampa Bay area. If that happens, then that's going to give even less opportunity for Irma to weaken before landfall. And that is a dynamic situation that we'll continue to have to watch, and it won't be something that we'll know probably for another 12 to 18, 20 hours. But here's why I don't think it's going to matter that much, guys. And quite simply, this is the biggest factor right now. Outside of the fact that it's getting its act together in terms of the core, now nearly completing that cycle. Once that core is intact and it becomes more symmetrical and Irma begins to intensify, it's going to do so over waters that are 30 Celsius. And you can see here, and this is important to note, anybody that tracked Harvey remembers there was a warm eddy of water that was right, and you can actually see it here. I'll go over here. It was right here before it actually made landfall near Rockport, Texas. The eddy was around this region. Actually, if you look over here real quick too, as a bonus, the reason the waters are so much cooler here is because of Harvey. A week and a half later. Interesting tidbit. But anyway, you see right here, there's this like 31 and 32 degree patch here. I think that it's right on the north side of the Keys. Irma's going to pass right over that. And when Irma passes over it, I mean, it will only continue to give this already robust system more potential to strengthen. And it will have already completed its eye wall cycle as we're observing it now. So that's why I think the shear, I don't think it'll be as much of a factor as people are accounting it for. I know National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center mentioned it in their discussion. I think they threw that in there as like a wild card that, hey, this, the weakening can start occurring before landfall. But they've already upgraded their track several times to change the actual intensity of the storm. They went from a Category 3 landing from this morning to a Category 4. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but they made changes in what that intensity was going to be during its track before landfall. They went from a 3 to a 4, so they kind of see this trend happening. So don't pretend that it can't happen. It's already happening, and I think tonight is when it really blossoms, mainly because of the warm waters that it will be encountering as it makes its way over the Keys. All right, so let's talk about landfall. This is the Euro showing landfall right. I mean, I think if you were to zoom in a little bit here, it was actually just shy of Tampa Bay when it actually came on shore, so closer to St. Petersburg area, but then makes its way right up into the gut. I think this is going to verify, because if you look at the track officially, and I'll show it to you on the ensemble, right now Irma is actually tracking just west of the official national NHC track. I'll show that next. So I think it's actually going to go bow out a little further west than that, which would then result in a more northern landfall. But let's talk about impacts. Everybody's talking right now about, well, where's landfall? Where are the worst winds going to be? What does that mean for my neighborhood? Here's why this system is unique and why I think when it's said and done will be one of the worst landfalls in Florida history, because the actual sustained wind fields, and this is recon derived, this isn't something that was pulled off of a model. This is what recon has actually observed. As we look right now, 75 mile an hour winds extend out for a radius of, what was it, roughly 80 miles. So if you're looking at this and then you look at the 50 mile an hour wind band, most of the state will start to feel hurricane conditions. I would say probably if you cross-section halfway through Florida and then west, you're going to feel hurricane conditions. And then if you cross-section from there, from halfway, I would say just to the shores, you're going to feel tropical storm winds all the way up, even up to hurricane gusts. This is a very wide system with a huge wind field, and it's going to be an extended event. So that's something that that you need to consider. Next thing, path. Now, I want to mention to you, when you look at the maximum wind speed gusts on here, do not take them verbatim. This is based on the idea that upon landfall, Irma would be anywhere from a high-end Category 3 to a low-end Category 4. Okay, so you're seeing 139 mile an hour gusts in Tampa. You're also seeing 135 mile an hour winds down near Fort Myers. And like I said, kind of cross-sectioning Central Florida, you can kind of see where the hurricane winds are going to extend pretty far inland. I think there's a chance they actually go further in based on how much Irma intensifies over the next 18 hours, and we'll keep observing that. But as you can see, a wide swath of Florida experiencing hurricane conditions for quite some time. Real quick, the model guidance, this is for yesterday. And this is for today. Not exactly the same, graphs, so it's hard to show you the difference. But the point I'm trying to show you is that they're pretty much on board with this idea that there's even a possibility the entire west coast of Florida gets scraped. And this doesn't even make landfall until further north, right at the bend. We'll see if that happens. I don't know if there's enough real estate to allow that to happen. We'll see. But I just know at this point that anyone in Tallahassee and south needs to be on watch and where this actually makes landfall. You'll feel the conditions of it well before it reaches you, but definitely understand that surge and winds are going to be some of the bigger impacts, including the flooding, which I'll get to in a second here as well. All right, one of my favorite tools to use, and it is a blessing that U of Albany has put this together. So thank you to any one of those people. If you know anybody, find a donation page for me. I'll send them some money because they are just money with this graph. But one thing I want to show you is verification. Verification right now is just west of the official track. European is actually a little further west than the actual track. Now, I don't know, this was from 12Z Euro today, so this is the ensemble of the European from noonish or from 2 p.m. Eastern time today. So I think Irma is actually right in, going to make its way over this far because it's still moving northwest. Last I checked. Oh, my thing went out here. My tracker. Hopefully it loads up here. But anyway, because it's due, yeah, there it is. And if I'm looking at it here, it looks like it's still just west of that track. We'll see if National Hurricane Center makes any changes. I don't know if they will because it's such a minute tick to the west. But again, for the track where landfall is going to be, that's going to be important because National Hurricane Center says they think it's going to be somewhere in the Fort Myers area. But if you account for that west tick, you're going to see it come more towards Tampa Bay, which is what the European is saying. We'll talk about impacts here in a little bit there, Cheetah. We'll get to that. Let me just get through these. Okay, so let's start talking about surge. Surge really concerns me because, and I'm going to use this analogy so people can picture this in their mind. If you're at a lake and you see a boat go by and you're standing at the lip of the lake and it's kind of a deep lip, you know, as a boat goes by and the wake comes up, it kind of just laps up onto the shoreline there. It doesn't really do much. Now, say you're at that same lake and further over there's a beach. If that same boat went by, in the wake that it creates, we all know from experience that that water actually comes up much further, right? Because it's more of a gradual decline in depth, and therefore allows the water to flow more freely up towards the shore. That's what we're looking at right now with the western shore of Florida. It is a very gradual shelf that makes its way back up into all of the bays and all of the shorelines along the west coast of Florida. And that's concerning because the amount of surge that is coming with Irma is going to be tremendous. We're going to see the images probably sometime tomorrow morning from Key West as it hits. I don't imagine that they'll be pretty, but all of those waters, we've seen wave heights of 40 to 60 feet with this. They're going to make their way up into these harbors and these bays. And when it happens, if it were a deeper shelf, right, it wouldn't have as much of an effect. But because that shelf is very gradual, all of that water energy and that underwelling that is pushing up against the shelf, it's all going to come to a head right up at the shorelines, and it's going to come very far inland. And that's where I think the biggest risk is with this system. It's not so much the winds. It is not so much the rain. There will be some flooding. But it is the surge that is going to be, especially the Tampa Bay area. There have been op-eds written about it and scientific papers just showing how poorly engineered it was and how, in many cases, a lot of the major infrastructure was just disregarded in terms of safety when it comes to surge issues. Anyone that lives there too can tell you when it rains an inch or two, you see pooling of water all over the place. And, again, it is a very susceptible area to surge. And if you're getting 12 to 15 feet of surge, which is what is projected for some of those areas, you're going to see some major issues. And real quick, just going to throw this in there. The amount of energy that is off the coast, I talked about this yesterday, but it's going on right now. This is why you're seeing all these tornadoes flare up here in eastern Florida near Miami and north. Basically, the instability and the amount of energy available in the atmosphere is allowing for larger cells to, make their way on shore and then push further inland, and then we're seeing tornadoes. I've already seen some videos, pretty insane already, and that should persist through the evening, so please be careful if you're on the east coast of Florida. So let's talk about inundation with surge. This is an image I pulled off of a tweet. It just kind of goes to show you this is 6 miles inland with 3 feet of water. 2 miles inland with 9 feet of water near Naples. 4 miles inland with 9 feet of water. 6 miles in with 9 to then 6 to 3 feet of water. And then further in is 9. 9 miles inland, you can get surge. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but with a state like Florida as flat as it is, and then as much swampland exists, and the topography is, as flat as it is, it's going to allow these streams, the smaller lakes, the tributaries, all to get swollen with moisture and water and then force them way further inland. So it's just not a good scenario for surge right now. Now let's talk about that. This is a great tool. It went official this year. It was experimental last year. And I'm glad it's available because this is going to give you guys some ideas. just how much water is expected. Red indicates 9 feet. This zone here is 6 feet. Yellow is 3 foot, and then 1 foot. So if I zoom in here and kind of move around, Marco Island completely inundated, 9 feet plus. If we make our way up north, Naples completely inundated all the way into East Naples, Naples Manor, 9 feet of surge. Making our way north, and this is where it gets really bad. Sanibel Island completely overflowed, right up into Cape Coral. Some parts in central Cape Coral are going to see 3 to 6 feet of water to 9 feet of water along the river there, and then of course further inland. And anywhere you see where it is gray it's an intertidal zone that's right on the water, and anywhere from 12 to 15 feet can be seen there. So again, just areas severely impacted by the surge that's going to make its way through. And if this shifts further west, this will change the inundation that's going to be seen in Tampa, St. Petersburg area. There's areas of 3, there's some areas of 6 feet. Oh, there we go. Some areas of 6 feet, some areas of 3 feet. See some areas here of 9 to 6 feet to 3 feet in Tampa proper. If this shifts any further west, this is going to be a real issue for Tampa Bay. That's why if you're in that Tampa Bay area, if you know of Tampa Bay, residents, you really have to hope that it doesn't shift any further west, because if it does and decides to come up the bay like the Euro is showing, what you're seeing in Fort Myers, which is here, in Cape Coral, this is what Tampa will look like. And it won't be pretty. Let's talk about the Big Bend real quick. If it shifts north, already you're going to see parts as it is with the official National Hurricane Center forecast. You're going to see further up inundation all along the coast. You can see that. And already you see the Big Bend is having some forecasted areas of getting inundation as well. Now, if this shifts west, this will also get worse. Because again, it'll bring the surge further up this way. Because as it's forecasted right now, it's showing that Irma is going to make its way up and then make landfall somewhere here. The European is saying up here, and you can see why that would then change the angle of approach and the angle of the surge. The northeast corner of a system is typically where you see the surge travel along. So if we're to bring that up again on the radar, this being the northeast quadrant, that would be where the majority of the surge would be. So going back to the flooding piece, this is, yes, it does. The surge map updates with the trajectories from National Hurricane Center. They work very close together in that to make that as accurate as possible. Good question. You can already see here, any of these purple dots, they're anticipating major flooding. Major flooding typically means it will reach historical levels or above in terms of the amount of freshwater flooding that will occur, not including surge. Surge is not included in that, just freshwater flooding. So they're already saying that there will be record floods from North Tampa all the way down to Cape Coral. So if you're anywhere from North Tampa, or you know of people from North Tampa to Cape Coral, expect moderate flooding inland to major flooding. And that's already being anticipated based on the banding that will come in and the amount of fresh water that is dumped in the area. And to kind of wrap this up, because I think I'm going on a little bit, now like 34 minutes. As this makes its way into interior Georgia, then Alabama, look, these are actual gusts of winds, 52, 48, 61. It's really going to be windy up and around Alabama. Shout out to my parents if you're watching. Be careful of that in Huntsville. 61 miles an hour in the Georgia, Atlanta area, to even some higher gusts, I'm sure, can occur. It's going to get really windy and rainy later and early next week. So there could be some power outages because of that as the system dissipates and makes its way out. And that's really, guys, all that I had for you. I think officially, if we go back here real quick and we look at the, let me pull up that. There we go. I think this is going to be the real path. I think between the European and the National Hurricane Center's prediction is where this will land. So that would be like South Tampa. That's where I personally think this will go based on everything that I've seen. Again, subject to change based on any other west shifts. But I think at this point, if I can bring up let me just pull this up so you guys can see it. Let me pull up the continental sector. This has been really acting up for me today. I think it's because everyone, their mom's using it. All right. So let's go back to 96 frames and slow down. Slow down a little bit. There we go. I don't know how many of you have actually seen the GOES imagery, but it's pretty impressive. Gosh, can we not go so fast? There we go. And we'll change it to 24 frames. While this is loading, I'll look at someone had a question. Hurricanes. Yes, you can most definitely see hurricane force winds once it makes landfall in Orlando, most certainly, and it can be sustained. Because it's going to be making landfall further north than it was before, as it's skirting the west coast of Florida, it will send in hurricane winds over a broader region than it was before if it made landfall in southern Florida. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but as it makes its way up, it will do that. It will throw in higher winds, and then versus if it made landfall further south. All right, there we go. I can go a little bit faster. Okay, I'm just trying to being very finicky right now. Okay. So you guys can kind of see this ridge here, right? That is the trough that has been talked about ad nauseum for this system. That trough is dictating this in a cone path, if you will. And if this ever loads the other frames, I will show you. Oh my gosh, why is it not loading that middle? Hold on a second here. Oh, it's kind of... There we go. If we go slower, maybe it will. Okay. I think we might have it there. Okay. So here is that trough. And as Irma makes its way to the northwest, this section right here is really where Irma is allowed to go. Okay. It cannot break that trough. Cold air bullies warm air anytime that you see a system of this magnitude. Doesn't matter. Cold air will bully warm air anytime. That's why troughs pull these things out over the ocean and then go poleward every time. That out to sea motion. Because as a trough comes over the U.S. and makes its way across, if it hits it offshore, it takes the system, makes its way northeast, and then becomes extratropical. So this is the zone, essentially, and I'm going to stop this because it's annoying the heck out of me. This is the zone where Irma is allowed to play, okay? If this trough lifts even further north and say it lifts out of the area, yes, Tallahassee could come into play. But I really think at this point, I think we have seen as far as this can go in terms of a western motion. That's why... If you look at the, I think it loaded in the back here. Look at that. Finally, that's why you see that clear northwest motion starting to happen now and make its way towards the forecasted area. And actually, I'll tell you, it looks west of the National Hurricane Center's actual path. So I think the European, once again, is, as it's been doing this whole time, is verifying. One other product I want to show you guys, and I know it doesn't look nearly as pretty. Gosh, it is just not nearly as nice as GOES 16. But these floaters can do a lot for you here in terms of showing you. I can't wait till these overlays are available for Go 16. But it can show you latitude, and it can show you the official forecast path. And look, if you can see, it is now west, a good bit west of the official track. I don't know if you guys can see. I'll zoom in. It's god awful ugly, but I'll do it anyway. It is northwest. I would even say due west of the official track right now. So again, big implications. If it's more west, that means it's more likely Tampa than Fort Myers landfall. So we'll continue to monitor this through the evening and through the day tomorrow. Realistically, can the trough move southeast? No, it's not exhibiting that motion, and the models had that nailed down. It is lifting to the northeast. It won't come further southeast. If that were the case, this thing would have not even been here. It would have been way east already. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to hop back into the Discord and the IRC. Back into the live thread. I know there's a lot of work. I see a lot of updates since I've been on here. I appreciate you guys joining. I hope this is I will link the floater view. I will do that. I hope this has shown you guys kind of my view of how I think things are playing out. Some of the implications I think that are coming with surge, especially. So. I am not. Your name is Dizzy. That's what I'm calling you. And I'm probably wrong with that too. So that's what I'm calling you. Do you have any concept of the high soil moisture saturation anomalies in Central Florida have impact on surge effects? Way out of my league on that one. That was an awesome question. What I will tell you though is because of Florida's topography, because of how all the rains that you guys have gotten too over the last week, flooding is really going to be an issue. I would say the safest part of the state right now is to the far northeast. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that D is silent too. Approximate speed. What speed? You mean wind speed? My guess is this is going to be a high-end category 4, so anywhere between 155 and 160. That's my guess right now. So, hopefully I'm wrong and this thing just gets sheared to hell before it even makes landfall. But again, with the sea surface temperatures and all the factors we talked about, I think Irma is going to prove once again how much of an exceptional system it is. Thanks, guys. Again, I'm going to be hopping back on. Let me know if you have any questions in the Discord or on my Facebook page to those that connected through there. Stay safe. Understand that this is a very dynamic event. Things can still change, but please be careful. Thank you.